A beautiful woman is attacked in her home.
There was no evidence of a break-in.
Her assailant leaves behind an erotic signature, lacy black lingerie.
Did he make her wear it for whatever sexual fantasy he might have had?
This conservative Florida neighborhood produces a long lineup of unusual suspects.
Whoa, wait a minute. Come on, you're bullshitting me.
But the killer is closer than anyone could imagine.
I just thought it was, once again, unbelievable.
It's a balmy spring day in the charming seaside town of Gulfport on the west coast of Florida. When evening falls, the streets are quiet in this close-knit neighborhood. But at 1:15 a.m., a single blood-curdling scream shatters the nighttime silence. Several of the neighbors hear the cry, but no one knows where it came from, and no one calls the police. The next day, the scream is all but forgotten. Life goes on as usual, except for one residence, where the phone is ringing off the hook. 1,200 miles away in Providence, Rhode Island, David Mackey has been anxiously calling home, trying to reach his girlfriend, Karen Gregory. He's a clinical social worker out of town at a conference.
We dated for almost a year and a half before we decided that she would move in. She began moving into my house while I was away.
Karen was supposed to have spent the night at David's house.
Okay.
He checks with her friends, but no one's seen her.
I started getting worried. And I thought, I don't like the feeling of this.
The next morning, he tries Karen's office, where she has just started a new job as a graphic artist.
They told me she hadn't shown up for work, and nor had she called. Well, at that point, I virtually panicked because I knew that was completely out of character.
David calls his neighbor, Amy, and asks her to go to the house to check on Karen while he stays on the line. Inside, she sees Karen Gregory, half naked, lying in a pool of blood.
She came back to the phone a couple of minutes later and was totally hysterical. She said, David, she was crying. She said, David, something really bad has happened. I've got to hang up and call the police. Well, here I am 1,000 or so miles away, and at that point, it's just like my head started spinning.
At 8:39 a.m., more than 31 hours after the bone-chilling scream in the night, police are called. What they find is gruesome.
The crime scene was pretty brutal. There was a lot of blood, and she had been stabbed numerous times. The injuries were consistent with like a buck knife. What do you got?
As the police begin to investigate the murder scene, the phone rings.
Hello?
It's David, desperate to find out what happened. Police inform him that Karen is dead.
I just kind of collapsed on the floor, and I just sat there stunned. I couldn't make sense out of the world at that point.
Karen was the oldest of 4 children and close to her siblings, especially her brother Roy. He gets the crushing news from his younger sister, Kim.
Kim said she was killed. Someone stabbed her. And then it's like the world changed in a split second. It just changed. You know, she was my big sister, just real nurturing. And she was, I mean, she was my best friend. To think of someone brutalizing her like that, it's the worst kind of pain you can feel.
Detectives Larry Tossey and William Brinkworth of the Gulfport Police Department take on the investigation.
There was no evidence of a break-in. There was no obvious pry marks, no obvious destruction at all to the integrity of the door, nothing. I would think that whatever took place in that residence that evening took place with an individual that had been allowed in.
Karen's body is on the floor near one of the bedrooms. She is clad only in a black teddy over a white t-shirt. She has been raped and stabbed repeatedly. Her hands are cut and bruised, suggestive of defensive wounds. Detectives find several of the glass panes in a jalousie door shattered, some 20 steps from Karen's body.
The jalousies were broken out, and the screen that was behind the jalousie was also broken out. It looked like somebody's head had come through the screen and hit the jalousies.
Karen must have hit it with such force, the broken glass scattered outside on the walkway.
It was obvious that she almost made it outside. He either shoved her into the glass or she lost her balance and her head hit the glass because she had quite a gash in her head.
But Karen never made it outside. She was dragged back into the center of the house.
At some point, right in front of the bathroom door in that hallway, she was bludgeoned and or stabbed or both because we have a significant pool of blood there.
Detectives search for clues that might identify Karen's killer. Using luminol, a chemical that reveals blood under a blacklight, they take a close look at the carpet and make an amazing discovery.
There's a lot of bloody footprints in the carpet all around that blood pool, which indicated the assailant was moving around her at that point. She didn't have any blood on the bottom of her feet, so she didn't leave that.
Right before their eyes are the killer's bare footprints. They also find a bloody handprint on Karen's thigh, which tells them the assailant wasn't wearing gloves. With so much evidence left behind, detectives surmise this was most likely a brutal crime of passion. Lewis lives diagonally across from Karen's house and was working in his garage at the time of the scream. As the de facto head of the neighborhood watch, Lewis naturally took a moment to investigate.
He heard a scream, and he didn't say anything. He had even walked in between cars, looking around, didn't see anything else. Didn't hear anything else, just a single scream.
Lewis tells them he saw a man approach David Mackey's house the day after the murder. Police realized the person he saw was probably the same person who'd left a note they found tucked in the windshield of David's car. The note was addressed to Karen and David and said, "Stopped by about 7:15," and included the eerie phrase, "but saw no signs of life."
It struck everybody as odd because she was inside deceased.
It's a pretty cryptic note, as the next day they find a dead body there, and there's the note as well. So obviously, for sure he had been there around the time or shortly after the homicide, and so he was certainly a person of interest.
The note is signed Peter. So just who is this guy? Is he really a harmless friend? And could he hold the key to solving this vicious crime? The murder of Karen Gregory. Coming up, Peter tries to explain his mysterious note, but can't stick to one story.
I said, whoa, wait a minute, Peter. Come on, you're bullshitting me.
Police in Gulfport, Florida, are investigating the brutal rape and murder of 36-year-old Karen Gregory. They're intrigued by a note left outside the crime scene by someone named Peter. When investigators track the man down through Karen's friends, he turns out to be Peter Cumble, the host of a local bluegrass radio show. Detectives believe he is the same man a neighbor saw stop by Karen's house the morning after the murder. But the note, which contains the cryptic phrase, "saw no signs of life," isn't the only thing that seems suspicious about Cumble.
What were you doing over at Karen's house last night?
I just went over to go see her, have a little dinner with her.
We questioned Peter. He said that he came over, Karen Gregory invited him to dinner. Well, we couldn't find anyone else that was aware of this, David or anybody else, so, which seemed kind of strange to us that nobody would have known that.
And the more Cumble talks, the more police doubt his credibility.
He said, I was supposed to meet David and Karen that night. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. David Mackey was out of town at a conference. Peter, come on, you're bullshitting me.
This is just the first in a long line of changes Cumble makes to his story. The next one is even more suspicious. Cumble claims he walked to the front door of Mackey's home and knocked. When there was no answer, he thought no one was home, so he left the note on the car windshield. But detectives are baffled by the fact that Cumble never mentions the broken windows in the front door or scattered glass on the doormat and walkway.
As you approach that door, anybody, glasses or not, would have seen the glass debris on the walkway or on the steps and the jalousies broken out and pushed out. Now, you can take that several ways. You can take it, well, maybe somebody had a trip and fall, or somebody threw something through it, or, you know, something's gone wrong. So it was something that would stand out to anybody.
Later, however, on a subsequent interview, he did state that, yeah, I do remember seeing glass. In fact, I think I remember kicking some aside with my shoe.
Cumble continues to be inconsistent in his storytelling and appears to hide a scratch on his hand.
I looked at it, and I guess it made him self-conscious because he moved his hand. And so that was a focus for me to pursue.
Cumble says his dog scratched him, but police wonder if it wasn't caused by broken glass.
He was becoming more of a suspect because of the way he was acting, because he just didn't seem to care, you know. If somebody was accusing me of something like that, I would be, good Lord, I'd be running and getting 6 attorneys, you know.
When police bring Cumble in for further questioning, he changes his story yet again, now saying he only stopped by to return a reggae cassette.
He answered the questions, very non-committal. It's like, you know, are you in the same planet with us, Peter? You know, this is exactly what happened. You were there, you know. Why did you leave this note? Why did you write that?
Investigators begin to believe they just might have their man.
They thought that he might have some attraction to Karen. Maybe it was a spurned lover scenario.
Do you intend to lie to me today?
No.
But Cumble surprises police when he agrees to take a polygraph and passes. Yet they're still not convinced he's innocent.
We talked to his roommate, we talked to his coworkers, we took his hairs, we took his prints, everything we could take to send to the lab. They were all eliminated.
With no physical evidence tying Cumble to the crime, in addition to the polygraph, police reluctantly drop him as a suspect, but still consider him a person of interest. Detectives Tossie and Brinkworth now turn their investigation closer to home.
Our initial feeling was that it was probably somebody she knew, and for whatever reason, you know, lost it.
They begin looking at everyone who knew Karen directly, as well as her most personal relationships.
We started with the closest individuals to her, which obviously was David Mackey, who lived with her.
But David has an alibi. He was at a conference in Providence, Rhode Island, the night of the murder.
David was out of town initially. Did he attend the conference? Did he take a Delta flight?
Brinkworth calls the hotel to check out David's story.
I found out Mr. Mackey was a guest speaker at the conference, and he was at that conference. And I also checked with the airlines and found out that he did take a flight up there. In my mind, he had an airtight alibi.
With David Mackey apparently cleared from suspicion, police turn to the crime lab in hopes that the bloody handprint found on Karen's leg will give them a new lead.
They attempted to get some ridges of this bloody handprint, but weren't able to do it. The blood had soaked into the skin, and between the texture of the skin and the handprints, they weren't able to do it.
Things only get worse when the lab discovers the bloody footprints on the carpet are smeared and can't be used to identify the killer either. Investigators are back to square one.
Well, we don't have any physical evidence to lead you anywhere. It's pretty tough.
They turn back to David Mackey, but this time they need his help. Detectives ask him to go to the house to identify anything that might be missing. Anything that might give them a clue about who the killer is. As he searches Karen's belongings, Mackey discovers only one thing is missing: a white teddy.
As it happened, only a couple of weeks before I left, she had gone shopping and bought a couple of tops and some pants and a teddy. It jumped out at me that that was the only garment that I could remember that was missing. And I thought, this is odd.
But besides the missing lingerie, David discovers something new, something the police missed during their search.
What I found on the dining room table were some documents like blueprints that had this fellow's name on it.
The blueprints seem to be a design for a clock by Stephen Perry. But more importantly, they appear to have what looks like a bloody fingerprint on them. Mackey immediately calls the detectives.
Stephen became a suspect. We pursued him, talking to everybody that was his co-workers and that he associated with.
It turns out one of Perry's co-workers was Karen Gregory. Detectives bring him in for an interview, and right away, they're surprised by his behavior.
No, I don't.
He came into the police department, he was very, I don't want to use the word belligerent.
Really?
But kind of a New Yorker style, if you will.
Perry says he showed the design to several of the graphic artists at work.
When I asked him how did it end up in her house, I have no idea. You know, maybe she kept it, brought it home to look at it. He just said he don't remember how these things happen.
Detectives then ask Perry to take a polygraph test, and he reluctantly agrees. When the technician pressures him as to what he knows about the murder, Perry becomes irate.
Yes, I did it.
He tries to retract his statement, saying he was just angry, but police are dubious. However, his case is helped when the red smear on his blueprints turns out to be neither fingerprints nor blood.
It was food. I think it was ketchup or some kind of food coloring. So that took care of that.
With no supporting physical evidence, interest in Perry quickly fades, and police are left with no viable suspects.
I'm sure it made the detectives crazy. I mean, they didn't know even where to go. Where do you even get on a scent when there's nothing obvious about it?
6 months pass, and the case of Karen Gregory's murder is growing cold.
At one point in time, I was instructed to get off the case, shelf it, to use my terminology, and get on with some other things.
But even as resources are getting moved to other cases, Detective Taussey can't give up.
I did spend a lot of time.
There a hole in David Mackey's alibi large enough for a murder?
I tried to do exactly what he would have done, and with the timing and all, it would be possible for him to have done it.
In Gulfport, Florida, the search for Karen Gregory's killer has hit nothing but dead ends. It's been 6 months, and her distraught family is desperate for answers.
It was just a living hell every day of just the not knowing was as bad as the murder itself. And she's dead, but it wasn't a car accident. She wasn't sick. Somebody killed her.
Another person deeply affected by Karen's murder is the head of the neighborhood watch, George Lewis, who lives across the street. The brutal attack occurred on his block, and he's determined to do whatever he can to help police.
I talk with George. I've known George for 15 years.
Who had been behaving strangely.
And he lived on the south side of town. He had been to some rehab at the VA because he was a Vietnam vet. And so I had him in, I interviewed him, took samples from him, hair, fingerprints. I just thought that possibly he had run into Karen, talked to Karen. You know, there might have been something there. He might have come back one night.
After checking with the gardener's friends and relatives, detectives confirm his whereabouts the night of the murder. The gardener is dismissed as a suspect. As investigators come up empty yet again, David Mackey, Karen's boyfriend, becomes increasingly frustrated. He's a regular at the police station, demanding to be updated on the case. But one day, he's shocked by what he's told. Police resources are getting shifted to other, more recent cases.
And when I found out about that, I almost went berserk. And I said, that's not going to happen as long as I'm breathing.
Mackey's constant hounding of the police leads them to reconsider his possible involvement in the murder.
In a lot of homicide cases, the killer will have regular contact with the police, either toying with them or to check on the progress of the case to see if police are getting any closer. So that aroused suspicion too.
Now, with his heightened distrust of Mackey, Detective Taussey reviews the crime scene photos with fresh eyes. He finds a detail that has been completely overlooked. In one of the photos, he sees a newspaper lying on a table next to an umbrella. On closer inspection, he realizes the newspaper is from Providence, Rhode Island, 1,200 miles away, the city that Mackey was supposedly visiting the night of the murder.
There were a couple newspapers in there from Providence, and it was dated at that time. So where did that come from?
Could Mackey have returned the night Karen was killed and inadvertently left the newspaper behind? Mackey claims he bought the newspaper from a local stand to read the weather forecast for his trip to Providence.
As I always do, this is what I do.
Taussey checks the newsstand and finds out they do indeed sell the Providence paper. But when Taussey reads the weather report for that day in Mackey's paper, it calls for rain. If Mackey, a normally organized and meticulous man, knew there was going to be rain, why is his umbrella sitting right next to the newspaper in the picture?
He would have brought the umbrella, so why is it here? Could he have returned and brought the umbrella with him? And when this homicide occurred, he forgot it and just left it there and took off.
Mackey claims he simply left the umbrella behind. But Taussey isn't so sure. He talks to people from the conference in Rhode Island.
They did verify that he was there, and he did give his presentation around 8 o'clock in the morning. That still would have left time for him to catch a flight, go up there, and come back and do this deed and then return, still in time for his presentation.
To verify his theory, Taussey decides to take the same flight to Rhode Island that Mackey did. Same day of the week, same time, then double back to Gulfport and return to Providence.
I tried to do exactly what he would have done, and with the timing and all, everything would have had to gone exactly right. No delays, traffic, anything.
Taussey proved it could be done. Now he finds himself suspicious of everything Mackey says and does.
I did confront David Mackey with the polygraph, and he did take one.
Mackey passes the polygraph without a trace of doubt, and Taussey is forced to take him off the suspect list. Taussey has no choice but to start over again.
These things take a lot of time, and usually if you don't catch it within the first, 24, 48 hours, you got an uphill battle from that point.
Taussey's battle has been raging for 7 months, yet he refuses to give up, constantly looking for new avenues to pursue. One day, Taussey receives a new piece of information. A witness has reported hearing the now famous scream 1/3 of a mile from David Mackey's house. Taussey finds this odd.
We got to thinking about that. Well, gosh darn, this woman living several blocks away, she heard the scream. Here's George Lewis living across the street diagonally. He's outside. He hears a scream, but doesn't hear the glass breaking, doesn't hear anything else. So that's how we started talking with George Lewis again.
But Lewis is not only a key witness, he's a longtime friend of lead detective Taussey.
I knew George. He was a volunteer fireman at Gulfport at the time. We would socialize a little bit and go over for cookouts and things like that.
Lewis is surprised when he's called to the station by his friend Larry Taussey. But when Lewis retells the events of the night of the scream, there are discrepancies in his story. He originally told police that after checking the street, he went back to work in his garage. Now he says, after checking the street, he turned off his garage light, closed the door, and went inside his house. The changes to his story may seem small, but they're large enough to make police curious.
If you're truly innocent and are a person who's supposed to be helpful to the police, he's a firefighter, I couldn't draw any conclusions as to why he would be changing his story. I mean, there's really no explanation for that.
To help clear things up and to keep his friend out of the spotlight, Taussey asks George Lewis to take a polygraph.
When we requested the polygraph initially, it was not enough for the reason that he was a suspect, but we knew that he wasn't telling the truth. It was something he was hiding. And so we were trying to find out what that was. Either he knew who it was or he was afraid to tell.
Last May, did you stab Karen to death?
No.
When Lewis's polygraph results come back, Taussie's suspicions are confirmed. Lewis has not been telling the truth about his actions that night. And upon further questioning, Lewis changes his story yet again, but this time with an entirely new twist. Now he claims that he saw a man in Karen's yard the night of the murder, and that he was scared and went back inside his house. He says he didn't reveal what he saw to police because the man had seen where he lived, and Lewis feared for his wife and baby. All of this from a dedicated firefighter and well-known neighborhood watch leader.
George was the type of person that if something happened in the neighborhood, he was quick to call the police. He's hiding something down, we have to find out what it is.
This is a man Detective Taussie has known for years. In fact, the detective presided over Lewis's wedding to his second wife. But now, Taussie is slowly starting to consider the unthinkable as the facts are quickly stacking up against his friend. Coming up, the dark secret behind the lingerie Karen was wearing the night she died.
Did he make her wear it for whatever sexual fantasy he might have had? I don't know. It's possible.
In Gulfport, Florida, 9 months have passed since Karen Gregory's murder, and a new and astounding suspect has emerged in the case. Firefighter George Lewis, Karen's neighbor, and a self-appointed leader of the Neighborhood Watch program. Stranger still, he's a close friend of lead detective Larry Taussie.
It got to that point where I felt that, gosh, it looks like it's George.
During the course of several interviews, Lewis has already changed his story numerous times. His latest version is that he saw a man in Karen's yard the night of the murder, but was too frightened to say anything, for fear the man would come after him.
I actually saw a man.
Lewis gives detectives a highly detailed account of what the man looks like and what he was wearing. But Lewis's account seems too detailed, especially from a distance of 75 yards away at 1:15 a.m. on a dark, moonless night. So detectives Taussie and Brinkworth decide to put Lewis to the test. They set up a recreation. Brinkworth wears clothes that match the stranger's appearance in Lewis's testimony.
See the person out there for me?
They took him over to his house. I stood in the same spot on the lawn of Karen's and David's house that he said he saw the individual. He's known me for 15 years, and he couldn't identify me.
As suspicions rise, Lewis is given another polygraph and fails for a second time.
Did you murder Karen Gregory?
No.
Apparently grasping for straws, Lewis changes his story again. This time, he tells detectives he not only saw the man, he talked to him. Lewis says the man noticed him and then walked toward George's driveway. The man physically threatened Lewis and told him to keep quiet or he'd come back and kill George and his family.
So here's a guy who allegedly just killed a girl. Here comes the neighbor, and he's going to come out and confront this neighbor so he can get a better look at him. Well, logically, that doesn't make any sense.
Despite their skepticism, detectives play along with Lewis, asking him to do a composite drawing of the man. No one recognizes the face in the sketch, except William Brinkworth and Larry Taussie.
Well, when he did the sketch with the artist, they compared it to his high school annual, and it looked identical to him. So he sketched himself. He was sketching himself.
Is Lewis covering his tracks in case someone saw him leaving Karen's house that night? Or is he subconsciously confessing to the murder? After Lewis fails a third straight polygraph, detectives think they have the killer. But there's no physical evidence to make an arrest. So detectives try a new approach, getting to George through his current wife, Glenda.
She had told us initially that she heard a scream and couldn't find George, didn't know where he was. Looked outside, didn't see him. She said he was gone for the longest time, to use her words, 20 minutes or so.
But when police re-interview Lewis's wife, her timeline of that night's events suddenly shrinks dramatically.
She said he was only gone a couple of minutes. So, you know, her story changed too.
Unable to rely on Lewis's wife, detectives go digging into his deep, dark past. They track down Lewis's first wife, who reveals an intriguing fact. She says Lewis had an erotic obsession with lingerie. Police now wonder if there's a special significance to the black teddy Karen was wearing when she died. And is it the link between Lewis and the crime scene? Karen was wearing the teddy on top of a white t-shirt, which made no sense on such a hot, humid night.
Did he make her wear it for whatever sexual fantasy he might have had? I don't know. It's possible.
And what about the white teddy? The only item missing from Karen's belongings. Was it a trophy from this heinous murder? Tossi thinks he finds the answer when he discovers another one of Lewis's dirty little secrets. A young woman comes forward, claiming that he was having an affair with her. She also presents investigators with a bombshell.
I talked with this other girl. She said that George had given her a white teddy, but it was too big for her, but it would have in fact been the size for Karen Gregory.
Despite all this circumstantial evidence, there's still not enough hard proof to arrest Lewis. The case drags on for more than a year, while Karen Gregory's family remains in a heartbreaking limbo.
And my poor mom, you know, she said, I know you guys are all suffering, and it's horrible and painful. But she said, there's something about losing your child that you can't ever accept.
Detectives Brinkworth and Tossi are overwhelmed with new work, but they refuse to give up on the Gregory case.
There were many, many, many nights that Sergeant Tossi and I would work the 3 to 11 shift. He would be staring into that book continuously for hours, looking at the pictures, reading the statements, reading the initial police reports, reading the medical examiner's reports. I mean, he poured his whole life into it.
There were times when I certainly felt that it might not get solved, but I felt that it was my responsibility to do the best I could on it.
Then, one afternoon, Tossi notices a tiny detail in one of the crime scene photos. He zeroes in on a bloody smear left on the tile floor of the bathroom.
You could see that there were footprints all around the body, leading to the bathroom. So we knew this had to be the killer. So I wanted to examine this bloody smudge, because I felt it's got to be his. I went to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, told me you're wasting your time. There's nothing there, it's just a smudge.
Tossi's convinced it's more than a blood smear. He just needs one forensic lab to take him seriously. But lab technicians have trouble getting enough detail out of the photo to determine what, if anything, it is.
They came back with nothing.
They looked at it, examined, and they couldn't make a match.
Many of his colleagues think he's butting his head against a brick wall, but Larry Tossi remains convinced the bloody smear is the key to breaking the case. Coming up, perseverance finally pays off.
I just thought it was, once again, unbelievable.
The investigation into the murder of Karen Gregory is hanging by a thread. Lead detective Larry Tossi believes a photo of a blood smear on the tile in Karen's bathroom contains a faint imprint of a footprint that he hopes to match to George Lewis, their prime suspect in the case. But his own police lab and the county sheriff's lab tell Tossi there's no usable evidence in the photo. Could they both be wrong? It seems like a long shot to everyone but Tossi.
I didn't accept that as an answer. I felt maybe they didn't spend enough time on it or what have you.
Tossi figures his last chance is to send the photo and the negative to the foremost forensic lab in the country.
I sent it to Washington, the FBI laboratory.
Two months go by without a word. Tossi knows if this test fails, George Lewis may get away with murder. Finally, in March 1986, almost 2 years after Karen was killed, the case breaks wide open. Using a magnified copy of the blood smear, the FBI is able to identify detailed ridges from a footprint. Tossi has been right all along. When the FBI lab compares the image to Lewis's footprint, they declare it a match.
It was more than sufficient to show it was definitely his footprint.
The police now have one key piece of evidence that places Lewis inside the house. When confronted with this new information, unbelievably, George Lewis tries changing his story one more time.
Now, keep in mind, he didn't know where this footprint was in the house. We didn't tell him.
Lewis says he saw the stranger leave from the back of the house where Karen was murdered. The same stranger he's already mentioned in two very different versions of his story. This is now his third version.
He said, after he left, I went in real quick. You went in? Yeah, I went in the back bedroom window.
Lewis says he saw Karen on the floor. There was blood everywhere, so he panicked and left quickly. He never mentions going in the bathroom, which was where his footprint was found.
Here's a guy who alleges that he was scared to death of this guy who threatened to kill him. And now, not knowing whether the guy's inside, he has the courage all of a sudden to crawl into the window and look. So that didn't set very well.
Lewis claims he was too afraid to tell police the latest version of his story because they might have thought he was the killer. For the first time, one part of Lewis's story rings true. The police do believe he was the attacker. On March 15th, 1986, George Lewis is arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
I felt a tremendous sense of relief. That was the most relief I had felt since Karen was murdered.
You can be seated.
But Lewis's friends and co-workers are in utter disbelief.
There was a feeling, at least in part of the community, especially the firefighting community, that he was the wrong, this was an innocent guy.
The jury doesn't see it that way. After deliberating for just 2 days,
We, the jury, find the defendant, George Allen Lewis, guilty of murder.
Shocked at the verdict, George's wife, Glenda, who was 2 months pregnant with their second child, has to be escorted out of the courtroom. Thanks to indisputable physical evidence, on June 14, 1987, George Lewis is convicted of first-degree murder and sexual battery. When investigators try to understand this killer, they're baffled.
He had never really been in trouble. He was a firefighter. He was someone that was known to aid law enforcement. And the killing was so heinous, it was totally, I would think, inconsistent with the public perception of what people thought George Lewis was.
Some believe George became sexually fixated on Karen Gregory.
He allegedly made a comment to his friend about her laying on the lawn over there one day in a bikini, some sexual remarks.
Did Lewis become so obsessed he felt compelled to act on his deranged fantasies? Larry Tossi believes Lewis went to Karen's home on May 23, 1984, intent on making sexual advances. When she rejected him, his anger and wounded ego culminated in rape and murder. It's also possible that there may have been another, more twisted motive for Lewis's vicious attack.
I think George Lewis was racist. I don't think there's any question about that. and from people we've talked to and things. And I think that probably was part of the motivation of this homicide.
Lewis may have resented an interracial couple living across the street, and that hatred triggered his deadly rage. But no one knows. In a small Indiana town, a little girl goes missing.
Most of us knew that as each day passed, that the outcome most likely was not going to be good.
Then the devastating discovery.
Everybody realized there was a murder that was amongst them.
Was it you? Was it him? Was it her?
Suspects range from the bizarre.
He would urinate in jugs sitting next to his bed.
To the threatening.
He was a trapper and also a registered sex offender.
To the most trusted.
I just couldn't put my finger on why else they was needing all this DNA.
Who could have committed this shocking crime?
It was the person that you would never suspect.
Jackson County Sheriff's Department, how can I help you, please?
Yes, ma'am. I need to report my daughter missing.
Is she missing or did she run away?
No, she's missing.
And what was she wearing?
She has on a light blue coat, black pants, and white stripes.
Okay.
10-year-old Katie Coleman, a sweet, friendly little girl, was supposed to be home hours ago, and her family is frantic.
I told them she was missing and given the approximate time that she went missing, 3:15. By that time, it was about 7:15, 7:30. We were searching every door at every house, every garage, every business. Didn't know where to look, but I was looking everywhere.
Crothersville, 75 miles south of Indianapolis, is a small town of only 1,500. There are only so many places for a little girl to go. Investigators begin piecing together Katie's movements that day.
Got Katie up for school that morning, got her ready, dropped her off by her door, give her a hug and a kiss, told her I loved her. I'd see her later.
The last time anyone in her family saw her was around 3:30, when her mother sent her to pick up groceries at a nearby store.
Everybody in Crothersville would let their children go to the Dollar General store, to the bank, to the library. There was never really any concern.
This is the kind of neighborhood that you would hear about back in the 50s and 60s, where parents would let their kids go out and play until the sun went down. People left their doors unlocked. Everyone knew everyone.
Hey, is your daddy a cowboy?
Katie has lived in Crothersville most of her life.
My daddy's a cowboy.
Katie was known in our little town as somebody everybody's seen, always with a smile on her face, always offering to help someone.
Katie's parents are Angie, a stay-at-home mom, and John, a machinist at the local copper wire factory.
My daughter, my best friend, my little grease monkey. I worked on vehicles. She'd work on them with me. Katie and I had a real good father-daughter relationship.
After Katie left the neighborhood store, several people report they saw her near the railroad tracks around 4 o'clock. She was walking towards her home, only a few hundred yards away, but she never made it. Somewhere along that short route, Katie vanished.
We didn't know if she was in danger. We didn't know if she'd wandered away. We didn't know what had happened.
Rob Simpson joins the search. He's a detective with the Indiana State Police and has years of experience with cases involving children.
Who last seen her? Where was she walking at? Could she be with a friend? Could there have been an issue at home to where, she just went over to a friend's house to cool off or something like that?
But her parents claim Katie didn't have any problems at home that day. And her father says she would never run off without telling someone.
That wasn't Katie's character. That wasn't her. She's a little girl and it's dark and she knows that she's supposed to be home.
As soon as word gets out that Katie is missing, most of Crothersville turns out to help find her.
We were searching the railroad tracks. I searched the feed mill store, pond behind people's house, just everywhere I could think of.
But Katie is nowhere to be found. To her anxious father, it just doesn't make any sense.
This just doesn't happen in Crothersville. Nobody goes missing in Crothersville without somebody knowing something.
Then, a customer who'd been in the same store as Katie says the girl might have been distracted by an injured dog.
There was some talk about a dog that had been hit on the railroad tracks.
And she knew who the dog belonged to. And Katie, being Katie, went to tell them about their dog being hit by a train.
Investigators wonder if the dog's owners live in a nearby apartment building, and if Katie went there to find them. Did her helpful nature get her into trouble? They canvass everyone in that area, looking for anyone who's seen her.
As the night continued to wear on and we weren't able to locate her, nobody else had seen her since she was last seen leaving the dollar store. That's when it became evident, I think, to most of us that the outcome most likely was not going to be good.
By now it's pitch dark, and Katie's father is growing desperate.
The fright, panic, and fear has done set in to me. Don't really want to talk to anybody. I just want to find my daughter.
But the next morning, after 18 exhaustive hours of searching, there's still no sign of Katie.
Our initial thoughts were that someone picked her up really close to the dollar store and taken her out of Crothersville because nobody had seen her. Couldn't find any other witnesses at all that could place her anywhere other than leaving the dollar store.
So we're thinking, well, who is this? Is this just some drifter that came through off of the interstate? Because Crothersville is very close to Interstate 65, which is a major thoroughfare through this area.
Katie has been taught not to get in a car with strangers, but as the hours tick by, the idea that Katie was abducted begins to terrify her father.
We're waiting for you to come home, baby. We're trying. We're trying.
After 24 hours with no leads, police and state troopers need help. Crothersville is only 40 miles from the Kentucky border. The possibility that Katie could have been abducted across state lines puts the case into the jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
The FBI has a vast amount of resources that they contribute to investigations.
The investigative team is now led by Special Agent Tony Seidel, a 25-year FBI veteran with extensive experience in child abductions.
Investigations where you have no witnesses to a child being abducted are always very complex cases. You have to identify motives. You have to identify individuals who might have had access to her at that particular time that they disappeared. You have to identify individuals who might have acted impulsively.
How'd it go? It went pretty good.
As with any case involving a child, the detectives focus on Katie's home life. Despite her parents' claim that there'd been nothing out of the ordinary that day, investigators still have to consider the unthinkable, that one or both of her parents could have been involved in her disappearance.
You know, we've seen this before to where a parent does something and harm their own children. So one of the things that we did, we interviewed both the parents multiple different times, looking for both consistencies in their stories and inconsistencies.
We're just getting started with this thing, and we're going to seek out everybody that has any involvement in this case.
Unless she had become injured and incapacitated, something had happened to her. Somebody had done something with her.
With the FBI's help, the search grid is expanded 20 miles to the nearby towns of Austin and Seymour. Then, 2 days after Katie's disappearance, they finally get their first solid lead.
I saw Katie. Yes, I was sitting in my car in front of...
There was a witness that called in to the police department and said that she had seen her as a passenger in a truck. She didn't recognize the individual driving the truck.
They drove past her, and then they made a turn onto a dead-end street. So they had to make a U-turn and come back, and then they drove past her again. So on 2 occasions, she was able to see Katie Coleman in this truck.
The witness says she saw them between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. Now that police have reason to believe Katie was kidnapped, they can issue an Amber Alert, the media bulletin that alerts the public about child abduction cases. It includes a description of the vehicle in which Katie was last seen.
It was a white Ford F-150, very clean.
They immediately went and searched the Bureau of Motor Vehicle Records for all persons owning a white Ford F-150.
It was a huge task because the F-150 was the most popular truck in the area and white was the most popular color. So we had pages of leads.
Then we cross-referenced that with registered sex offenders who drove a white Ford F-150 or who had a white Ford F-150 registered to them.
Every one of those persons was contacted and interviewed and had to provide some evidence of a satisfactory alibi.
She identified the driver as a skinny white male that was possibly wearing glasses.
Investigators release a composite sketch, which Katie's father says looks eerily similar to one of their neighbors.
He described him as a very odd individual, lived alone in a trailer.
We gathered information about this individual, including his driver's license photo, and it was a very startling resemblance of the composite.
The sketch isn't the only thing that marks Katie's neighbor as suspicious. Others report that he appears nervous and antisocial. The trailer where he lives is run down and filthy, and most significantly, he was overheard making chilling remarks about Katie's disappearance.
After Katie disappeared, he made the statement that for all he knew, that girl could be in a space beneath his stairs that he used to hide his girlfriends.
Both of Tony and I worked child molest cases prior. This could have been someone very easily that could have abducted a child.
Coming up, could a murky lake on the outskirts of town hide the answer to what happened to Katie Coleman?
I had frequently came across several wanted individuals, drugs, several deviant individuals, and it never ceased to amaze me what you'd find up here at the lake area.
Late January 2005, in Crothersville, Indiana, the FBI has joined local and state investigators in the case of missing 10-year-old Katie Coleman. They're taking a hard look at the little girl's eccentric neighbor. The day after her disappearance, he was overheard by a store owner, suggesting she might be hidden in his basement.
We thought that might be a possibility. He is holding her hostage. This individual is described as a loner, somebody who didn't have girlfriends at all.
We interviewed him. We searched his residence with his consent, and he was a very odd individual.
The house had a very bad odor, bad stench to it of urine. He would urinate in jugs and set them next to his bed, and often said he would spill them because he was too lazy to get up to go to the restroom at night.
During the search of his residence, we found a lot of used feminine hygiene products that he had in various locations around his residence. And there was no women that lived at the residence.
But what they find next turns the search from... Adding to their frustration, investigators aren't having any luck tracking down the white pickup truck a witness saw Katie in the afternoon she disappeared. In desperation, they go to the media. Katie has now been missing for 3 days.
If the person who has abducted Katie is watching this, do not harm her. Just let her go and let her come back to her family.
For Katie's parents, the double burden of being considered suspects and fearing for their daughter's safety takes a terrible emotional toll.
You just got like 100 million things going through your head. Every time the phone rings, it's like, oh, it's her, it's her.
Though there's no trace of Katie, investigators hold on to hope.
Back at the very beginning of our timeline, we have Katie on her way to the Dollar General store around 3:40 in the afternoon.
We didn't have any ransom requests. There was no evidence that she had been injured. So we were hopeful that she was still going to at least be recovered alive.
Indiana State Trooper Martin Meade has a gut feeling. He heads for Cypress Lake, 14 miles north of Crothersville.
I'd done a lot of investigations and patrolling in that area. I had frequently came across several wanted individuals, drugs, several deviant individuals, and it never ceased to amaze me what you'd find up here at the lake area.
Almost immediately, Officer Meade notices something floating in the water near a culvert.
The water was dark, murky, and it was a little hard to make out, but you could tell it was a blue jacket. Then I started noticing, okay, I can see hands, in the water, and then I started noticing hair and started putting everything together.
It's Katie Coleman. She is face down, her hands tied behind her back. The mystery has just become a tragedy.
At that point, my whole world just crushed in.
You know, who's out there? Somebody that's came in this area? Is it a serial killer? Is it somebody that's still loose?
The investigators change course. They're no longer looking for Katie. Now they're looking for Katie's killer.
When we first saw her being removed from the water, it was not obvious as to what the cause of death was. There were no obvious signs of physical injury from either a knife wound or any type of bullet wounds or anything else.
While Katie's body is sent to the medical examiner to determine the cause of death, investigators search the entire lake area for evidence.
It could be pieces of clothing, it could be trash, it could be a pop can, anything that might contain DNA.
But getting forensic evidence from Katie's body is going to take a while. Assuming she was killed the day she vanished, her body has been exposed to ice and water for 5 days. There's also the possibility she was killed elsewhere and dumped here. While the evidence from the site is sorted and analyzed, the investigating team continues the painstaking hunt for suspects.
We felt that it was somebody locally that had probably been responsible for Katie's disappearance just because of the remoteness of the area where she was taken from. We felt it was somebody that had to know the area or had familiarized themselves with the area.
Katie's hands had been tied with a slip knot, an especially cruel move.
The harder that you pull on that particular knot, the tighter it gets on your hands. So the harder she struggled, the more securely she was bound. The fact that that particular kind of a knot was used was one of the most chilling pieces of evidence that was developed in this case.
The viciousness of the crime makes investigators even more determined.
I can tell you this, we will not stop. The case will never be closed until we come to find the answer.
Coming up, is the slip knot the key to finding Katie's killer?
He was a trapper and also a registered sex offender.
In Crothersville, Indiana, one day after 10-year-old Katie Coleman's lifeless body was retrieved from a lake outside of town, her autopsy is complete. It indicates the child's lungs were filled with water, confirming the cause of death as drowning. Investigators will have to wait a few days for lab tests to come back. But with no bruising or defensive wounds, the autopsy results raise new questions.
There was no trauma on her body that indicated she'd struggled or that she'd suffered any injuries that suggested she'd been sexually molested. So the investigators were surprised because we now had to determine what the motive might have been.
Then, a break. Investigators discover the slip knot used to tie Katie's hands may offer a clue to a suspect.
It came to our attention that that might be typical of a trapper. So we were trying to identify trappers, the individuals that might trap fur-bearing animals that might have been in the area at the time.
We cross-referenced the sex offender registry that we had along with individuals who were known to be trappers. Another suspect was developed from this because he was a trapper and also a registered sex offender.
So where was you at on the 25th of January?
Investigators question a trapper who had been seen in the area around the time of Katie's disappearance. But he provides an alibi, being at work, which they're able to verify with his employer. He's eliminated as a suspect. 3 days after Katie's body was recovered, investigators are stuck. They can't find the white truck a witness saw Katie riding in. They don't have a motive for her murder, and no viable suspects have been identified. Then, on that 3rd day after Katie was found, the investigation explodes with a confession.
People were shocked, stunned.
We tied her hands and we took her out to the lake.
Out of nowhere, 20-year-old Chucky Hickman, a Crothersville native and known methamphetamine addict, walks into the precinct and tells investigators he killed Katie.
I thought, we've got him. We've got the murderer, and he can't live with himself because he's killed a 10-year-old.
He was one of those characters that lived in Crothersville. He used to sit out in one of those plastic yard chairs that you see everywhere and watch the traffic go by. Never worked, never did anything. He just hung out there in Crothersville.
He was known to be a drug user around town. Chucky was possibly under the influence, and he knew those facts. She'd been taken to Cypress Lake, hands tied behind her back, placed in the water, and she'd drowned.
The reason Hickman said he killed Katie blew the cover off an open secret in Crothersville. Methamphetamine use at an apartment building, the same one Katie passed on her way home.
He's confessed to killing Katie because she's seen meth activity, illegal drug activity, and that he has killed her to keep her quiet.
According to Hickman, after Katie left the store where she'd been sent by her mother, she stopped to visit a friend at the apartments along the way. Hickman was there with a buddy.
He says that Katie came upon them making methamphetamine, and that they freaked out, that they got scared, that they took her up to a lake to scare her.
They tied her hands behind her back, walked her up to the edge of the water, that she had accidentally slipped and fallen in. And they discussed whether or not they should try to save her, but ultimately decided they would just not discuss it any further and left Katie to drown.
The idea of a child being murdered to cover up drug use in a seemingly safe small town like Crothersville outrages everyone.
That was the big bomb that no one was prepared to hear, no one expected to hear, and it made national news, national headlines about this girl's death possibly being linked to covering up meth use.
While investigators are focused on Hickman, the crime lab finally completes its DNA analysis of the samples taken from Katie's body. It's another bombshell. She had been raped.
It was either shortly before or shortly after her death. Not only did Katie lose her life, she lost her innocence, all in the same act.
There had been no outward physical signs of sexual assault. No bruising, no tearing, no defensive wounds. But the DNA evidence, which took 3 days to analyze, reveals semen on Katie's body. The forensic scientist, Paulita McGuire, was lucky to find that.
Katie's body was in the water for 5 days, and the lake was almost frozen. So that, in a way, protected the biological evidence.
Armed with this new information, they re-interviewed Chucky Hickman.
We were troubled by the fact that he didn't mention the sexual assault at any time until we brought it up. And then he apparently ad-libbed that she had been sexually assaulted by the other individuals, not by him.
Now there's a simple solution. If Hickman's DNA matches, he's lying. And that will prove he's guilty of not only killing Katie, but raping her as well.
We obtained a warrant to obtain samples from Chucky Hickman to see whether or not his DNA matched the profile that was taken from Katie's body.
Hickman's DNA analysis takes another 3 days. But when the results come back, it's a huge shock. Hickman's DNA is not a match.
I was stunned when the sample did not match the profile we had from Katie's body. I had to get on the phone, call the investigators and let them know, this is not our guy. It's not a match. Keep looking.
Investigators start interviewing everyone connected to Hickman and begin taking DNA swabs.
I think everybody that was in the apartment complex was tested. Everybody that was initially identified as being around the dollar store at this time was tested. and definitely all the individuals that were initially implicated by Chucky Hickman, and it was over 70 individuals that were tested.
The actual DNA samples that I received would come in batches of, 10, 20, 30 at a time.
Even Katie's father is included in the DNA testing.
It was after the funeral service, and they informed us they were collecting DNA. I was given a story that it was to verify the paternity, but I knew it was something else.
I did the DNA analysis as quickly as it would let me, and I was given approval to work overtime and to stay late and to get this done. And being a parent myself, the one thing you want to do is to get that person off the street before they hurt someone else.
There are no DNA matches from Katie's father or anyone else connected to Hickman. But at least the DNA evidence makes one thing certain. Hickman could not have acted alone.
At the very least, there was one more person at least involved with Chucky.
There's still somebody else out there.
Next up, a seemingly random piece of evidence changes the course of the investigation.
I'll never forget walking up to that house and seeing Roger light cigarette butts laying all over the yard. Hundreds of them.
Investigators in the kidnapping and murder of 10-year-old Katie Coleman in Crothersville, Indiana, are now at a crossroads.
Hello, Charles. I'm Darren Downs with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. You and I met a little bit yesterday.
A local man, Chucky Hickman, has confessed to killing Katie, but his DNA doesn't match semen found on her body.
Chucky had never mentioned a sexual assault of Katie. We felt that if Chucky was responsible for the murder, Katie was also the victim of sexual assault on or about the same time that she was murdered.
In other words, someone else raped Katie. The crime lab works around the clock, taking DNA samples from an ever-growing list of possible suspects, trying to find a match to the semen that was on her body. The process is arduous and time-consuming.
I couldn't get a match. Nothing they brought to me was matching. It was very frustrating on a daily basis to process these samples, know that we had great DNA evidence, and we couldn't find the person who had done this to Katie. I always think, who's the next victim? I mean, is this person preying on another child? Roger was on the filter and not on the actual cigarette part that would have been smoked up so far we would not have been able to identify that.
It was a Rogers 100 brand cigarette, which was unique to the area.
Indiana State Trooper Rob Simpson checks with stores in a 50-mile radius around Crothersville and learns that Roger cigarettes are sold in only 4 places.
I went to each and every store, and I asked them if they would be willing to call me if somebody came into their store to buy Roger cigarettes, specifically Roger Lights or Roger Light 100s.
Barely a week later, Simpson's effort pays off.
I received a call from an employee from one of these stores and said that an individual came in here to buy a carton of Roger Light 100s.
What's even more significant, the man is driving a white pickup, just like the one the witness saw Katie in the day she disappeared. A white Ford F-150 truck.
I quickly called the Indiana State Police Dispatch and requested a registration check. The plate returned to an Anthony Stockelman of Seymour.
Nothing about Stockelman stands out. He's a 40-year-old married man with children, working in a local factory, living 15 miles north of Crothersville. But investigators had already met him 3 months earlier, just after Katie vanished.
When the information surfaced that we were looking for a white truck, individuals who saw him called into the command post and said he was in the area. You might want to talk to him. He admitted that he had seen Katie along the railroad tracks, but did not see what happened to her, did not see her talking with anybody else, didn't have any idea what had happened to her. There was nothing that made him stand out as a good suspect in this particular case. He had no affinity for children. He was not violent.
Stockelman even took a polygraph test, but didn't complete it. because he worked the graveyard shift the night before.
He kept falling asleep during the polygraph, so the polygrapher gave up and it was rescheduled for a later time.
Now, investigators want to talk to him again.
And I'll never forget walking up to that house and seeing Roger light cigarette butts laying all over the yard. Hundreds of them. Anthony met us at the door, seemed kind of surprised to see us, and told us, I've already spoke to you guys about this case.
He denied any involvement. He said he hadn't been to the lake in many years, and he didn't know anything about the case.
We really kind of pushed him on that. You have not been to Cypress Lake, which is only just a few miles from his house, a known area for people to go fish or just to go walk around Cypress Lake. And he stated he had not been there for 9 to 10 years.
Stockelman also has an alibi for the day Katie was killed.
He arrived home, according to his wife, 5 to 5:30 that evening, which was within the time frame that we felt Katie had probably died.
Investigators take a DNA sample from Stockelman and rush it off for testing. A few days later, they get the dramatic results.
And it was a match to the DNA on the cigarette butt that had been found out near the lake, and it was a match to the DNA from the autopsy.
Without question, Anthony Stockelman is the man who sexually assaulted Katie. But Chucky Hickman is already under arrest for her murder and has been in jail for more than 2 months. Were they in on it together, or is Chucky Hickman lying?
We were trying to fill in the timeline of Chucky's involvement in this, where he was the days before up to the time of Katie's disappearance and the hours after Katie's disappearance.
The investigation showed that Chucky Hickman was with people all that day and did not have time to be in a car driving 20 miles north to the scene where Katie was killed. It just wasn't true.
It's time to get underway.
At a news conference, prosecutor Steve Pearson breaks the news to an astounded public.
I have determined that the confessions and inculpatory statements made by Charles Chucky Hickman are false.
I couldn't believe that you would think that someone that would give a confession, they're guilty. But apparently not.
Nobody could come up with a reason why he would have confessed. He was known to abuse drugs, which might have predisposed him, and we couldn't refute the fact that he couldn't be responsible.
Put your hands behind your back. Anthony, you are under arrest for the sexual assault of Katie Coleman.
Still, the evidence against Stockelman ties him only to Katie's rape, not her murder. Did he act alone, or were others involved?
The community was stunned again. And at that point, people were thinking, is there a killer still in our community? Who killed Katie Coleman?
Coming up, another witness steps up with a revelation that turns this case on its ear.
We had a witness on State Road 11 that said there was this white truck that pulled in, and there was 3 individuals in the truck.
Investigators in the death of 10-year-old Katie Coleman face a serious dilemma. DNA absolutely proves Anthony Stockelman sexually assaulted Katie. But did he murder her, or did he have a partner who killed her?
We had a witness on State Road 11 that said there was this white truck that pulled in, and there was 3 individuals in the truck, which would have meant that possibly somebody was with Anthony whenever they went to Cypress Lake.
The state crime lab goes through everything in Stockelman's truck, looking for DNA or other evidence.
Various cigarette butts in the ashtray in the truck, swabs of the steering wheel, trying to see if someone else may have been involved in this particular crime. From what the DNA evidence was telling me, that no one else was in his truck except Stockelman and Katie.
The witness must have been wrong, but investigators still have no hard evidence that Stockelman alone killed Katie.
We needed to prove that he was responsible for the murder and not just hold him accountable for the sexual assault.
So we went back through the evidence, looked at everything we had, and that's when I decided to actually process the string just where someone handled that and tied that around Katie's hands.
Though the lake water had washed over it for 5 days, there is still a chance the killer left skin cells behind when he tied the knots. It's a long shot, but it's their only shot.
You can't see the skin cells, you just swab as hard as you can to pick those up. And hopefully I would have enough to develop a DNA profile to compare to.
3 days later, they get the results they've been desperately hoping for. The DNA is Stockelman's.
And when I ran that sample and it matched, I can't describe the feeling. It was overwhelming. I just felt like, oh my gosh, we've got him.
It was not just an average match either. The statistical analysis of the particular genes involved in this were such that it would have required more people on planet Earth than there are for there to be anyone else that would have that combination of genes.
Investigators already know Stockelman raped Katie. Now they have proof he killed her. Stockelman is charged with the little girl's murder.
We do know that he tied her hands behind her back and then transported her to the lake, which ultimately puts him responsible for her being in the water.
Step back, fellas. Give him some room.
When the news comes out, there's a sense of disbelief in the community. Could this be the cold-blooded killer responsible for Katie's death?
Did you murder Katie Coleman?
Anything you want to say to your family? And this time it was shocking for a different reason, because Anthony Stockelman was a family man. He was the kind of guy that just lived next door, lived his own life. You would never suspect him to be involved in a violent and abusive case like this. It was the person that you would never suspect.
Stockelman refuses to explain himself or give any details about his crime.
He never showed any remorse. He never showed any emotion. He's never admitted any responsibility for killing Katie.
But the evidence they've gathered tells investigators what probably happened. On the day Katie disappeared, Stockelman was helping pack his mother's things because she was moving out. Her house was directly on the route Katie took to the store and back.
And I think when she walked through there, something triggered a thought in his mind, a fantasy. He waited for her to come back, a little bit like a spider waiting for dinner to show up.
Hey, how's it going? Found a lost puppy. Is it yours?
They believe Stockelman lured the little girl inside his mother's house because no one was home.
Stockelman took advantage of her friendliness. He got her in a bedroom of that residence and sexually molested her.
There was evidence of this found on Katie's body, red fibers, which were the same type as a red rug in his mother's bedroom. Investigators believe after he sexually assaulted her, Stockelman put Katie in his truck around 4:30 and headed out of town, driving past the witness who would eventually help identify him.
I don't believe their hands were bound behind her at the time. Based on the witness account of seeing her in the truck, she didn't appear to be in any distress.
Most likely, Katie was in shock, which would explain the lack of terror on her face. When he arrived at the lake, Stockelman forced Katie out of the truck and into the freezing water.
He had every opportunity to just let her walk out the door or drop her off 2 blocks away or a mile away, but he chose to murder her.
As for the cigarette that provided the vital clue, Stockelman may have smoked that while watching the little girl drown.
I couldn't imagine anybody being able to stand on a creek bank and watch anybody, let alone my daughter, fight for their life with their hands tied behind their back in freezing temperatures at that, and watched her struggle till her last breath was gone.
Stockelman then left Katie there and drove home to have dinner with his family.
It's the worst case scenario that you can get. It's a child who's been treated horribly, killed heartlessly, dumped in a freezing lake.
Tony Stockman fooled a lot of people for a long period of time. He was a coward, and he was an opportunist that there's no doubt in my mind he would continue to be that if he were still on the streets.
Just a fragment, just enough to show him the texture of truth people handed me every night like loose change. When it ended, he stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Mano mu, you're sitting on gold. I snorted. It's just people talking. No, he said, leaning back, eyes narrowing with the clarity only the drunk possess. It's confession. It's people undressing their souls in your back seat. Who wouldn't listen to that? I told him it would be a violation, illegal. He waved this away like a fly. Blur their voices, change their names, make it art. People love stories. You've always loved stories. Why pretend you don't want to share them? I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong, and that frightened me. But it wasn't Stavros's words that pushed me. It was the night after. A tourist couple got into my taxi. 2 Americans, probably early 30s, the kind of people who dressed like they were about to hike a mountain even though they were going to a bar. They were arguing, not loudly, but with the sharpness of people who have reached the cliff edge of patience. I drove in silence. They didn't. She accused him of always hiding things. He accused her of never trusting him. She said she felt invisible. He said he felt suffocated. At one point she whispered, I just want you to tell me the truth for once. And he didn't have an answer. When they got out, they both apologized to me, as if their pain had been an inconvenience. I told them it was fine, but when they walked away, something strange happened. I wished I had captured their argument. Not for exploitation, not even for entertainment, but because it had been honest, raw, human in the way novels sometimes fake but rarely achieve. Later, lying in bed, I listened to an old recording, a middle-aged man admitting he feared he'd wasted his life. His voice cracked when he said the words. That crack lived in my head for days, and a thought slid into me. Quiet, but persistent. What if these voices could mean something to someone else? What if all this pain and all this truth wasn't meant to die inside my taxi? What if I could give it a home, a shape, a purpose? What if I could build something out of the raw material of other people's lives? Ambition, when it wakes, doesn't announce itself. It taps your shoulder with a gentle finger. Then it whispers, you could be more. The first time I tried to edit a recording, it was a disaster. I downloaded a free program, spent hours deleting background noise, cutting breath sounds, trying to soften voices without distorting them. My eyes burned, my hands cramped. I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt alive. I was creating something, crafting something. Shaping the world's debris into small, fragile monuments. I released the first episode anonymously. I called it The Taxi Confessor. The title felt dramatic, almost ridiculous. I didn't care. It was honest in its own crooked way. The episode was simple, just a few minutes of a man explaining why he lied to his children about being happy. I masked his voice, I changed details, I spoke a short introduction in my own voice. Heart pounding as I did, then uploaded it and closed my laptop like I'd committed a crime, which, technically, I had. The next morning, 10 people had listened. 10 strangers. 10 actual humans who had clicked on something pulled from the dark quiet of my nightly roots. I felt a jolt. Small, but unmistakably electric. The second episode got 30 listeners. The third, 100. By the end of the month, I had 2,000 subscribers. Someone on Twitter called it a haunting look into the hidden heart of urban life. Someone else called it a moral minefield. Both descriptions thrilled me. Both validated me. I told no one, not even Stavros. The secrecy made it feel more powerful, like a ritual only I could perform. Every night I drove through Athens, the neon reflections on rain puddles, the stray cats darting across alleys, the flicker of lives unfolding behind apartment windows, and I felt like I was gathering material for something that finally gave my existence shape. People kept talking. People always talk. A woman confessing she'd stolen from her employer. A man whispering that he hadn't spoken to his father in 20 years and didn't know how to begin. A teenager admitting she felt more at home online than in her real life. I recorded all of it. I justified all of it. The recorder became my silent companion, tucked near the gearshift like a second conscience. Except it wasn't a conscience. Consciences warn you. Mine encouraged me. I wasn't chasing fame, not yet, but I was chasing significance. And significance is a tricky addiction. It hides inside noble intentions. I'm preserving human truth, I told myself, but inside, a different voice said, they're listening because of you, because you chose what stories matter, because you're the vessel, because your voice makes these stories real. Pride grows quietly. Ambition grows faster. Both taste sweet in the beginning. Then came the episode that changed everything. A confession about infidelity. A married woman describing a moment of weakness, a love she couldn't let go of, a shame she could no longer carry alone. She never said her name, never described herself, but her emotion, it was devastatingly pure. I edited that recording with trembling hands. When I released it, it spread like wildfire. Within 3 days, it was #1 in Greece. Journalists called it the most intimate piece of audio ever produced. Listeners filled the comments with praise, calling the storyteller brave, calling me insightful, calling the show essential. No one questioned the ethics. No one cared how I obtained the confession. They only cared how it made them feel. That was the night temptation fully took hold. I walked through my apartment, pacing in the dark, heart pounding like I'd been running. My phone buzzed with notifications, shares, messages, offers. I felt like I had finally stepped out of my own shadow, like the world had been waiting for me, specifically me, to deliver something only I could deliver. It's happening, I whispered to myself. The words felt dangerous. The words felt delicious. I drove that night with a different kind of hunger. Every story felt like potential. Every voice felt like content. The back seat of my taxi became a stage, and I, unseen, unacknowledged, became its director. Passengers laughed, cried, whispered secrets, argued, confessed dreams.